lack of affordable housing, the effects of the ongoing pandemic, rent stabilization initiatives in Minneapolis and St. Paul, inflation, and supply chain issues are just some of the challenges facing Minnesota renters and homeowners. Joining me in the studio is Senator Kari Dziedzic, lead DFL member of the Senate Housing Committee. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
The last time we spoke, it was about the end of the pandemic eviction moratorium and the ensuing off-ramp that was put in place to help renters who'd gotten behind on their rent. In your view, how has that off-ramp worked?
I think we don't have the answers yet. I think part of it has worked. I think it has worked for the court system. It allowed them to adjust their scheduling, having those phases. I think it has we had a 15-day notice in there, and I think that has kept some tenants and landlords out of court. We have a June date that if you have an open application, that tenants and landlords can still work through, and you can't be evicted if you have that open application. So I think that is helping some, but I think we won't know the true effect for a little while yet to see, did it actually keep people in their homes, and did it allow them to get time to actually get the rent help money?
So we have to wait just a little bit longer for news on that. Mm-hmm. Okay. In the last election, voters in Minneapolis and St. Paul approved rent stabilization measures. Now, in Minneapolis, city leaders will work to form a policy, but in St. Paul, it is a specific policy that caps rent at a 3% increase. Some local developers are now threatening to halt projects because of that. How should the balance between rent control and development incentives move forward at this point?
So housing remains an overarching component of everything. Like I said at the beginning of the pandemic, how do you go home and how do you stay home if you don't have a home? I think we need to be talking big picture. How do you talk crime and crime control if you're not talking stable, affordable housing in all neighborhoods? How do you talk about student achievement and students not doing well in school when a lot of those might be issues with housing and security? So I think we have to look at all of that. And how do you talk about rent control if you have a market that doesn't even allow people to get to rent? When we have 550,000 families paying more than 30% of their rent in Minnesota, that is a problem. So what is I don't know if it's rent control, but we need to look at how do we keep people in their homes, because stable housing improves education outcomes, it improves health outcomes, it's keeping kids educated, it helps them with their education now and in the future, so that is our future workforce, and that helps local economies going forward. So we need to look at ways to keep them in their homes, and that's either my bill, Senate File 333, which is Bring It Home Minnesota, that would provide rent subsidies to help stabilize some of these families, or we need to work with developers and work with communities and build more very low income housing.
But what you're saying, though, is that this is a bigger issue than just how much people are paying to find a place to live, because if what they're trying to pay doesn't even get them anywhere, then it's a cascading effect of other problems.
Yep.
Is there a role for a bonding bill in this solution?
If the bonding bill will help pay for that very low income housing, yes. We need to build more housing for those very low income families and those very low income workers. We need to, I think the market in itself is raising wages for some of them, but when you're still paying 50% of your income towards rent, that at a certain point is not sustainable. Then you're not paying something else. So you are food insecure. You're cutting back on drugs, and so this is a systemic problem, and we need to have a holistic approach.
Now, I just read in the paper that Minneapolis is instituting the payments that with no strings attached, basic income. Thank you very much. Is that a possible way forward?
It's something we should look at. There was just a random study that just happened there was a study going on, and it was, I think, somewhere down south, and then it involved a Native American tribe that got some probably gambling money. So they got, as part of an agreement, they got some money, and each family ended up getting about $500 more a month. They were part of this controlled study already going on. And that again showed that just getting that $500 more a month helped stabilize those families. It stabilized housing. It gave the parents more security. It gave the kids more security. And those kids over time, again, their education did better. They were more comfortable in their learning, and so their outcome and their learning potential and their earning potential grew. So I think it does help, and so it could be something we look at.
In a December Star Tribune article about the housing market, a Twin Cities realtor said that the current market is unfair to first-time homebuyers because out-of-state corporations are coming in and buying up so many properties, either to turn them into rentals or to flip them. It's shutting out lower-income buyers, especially, those first-time homebuyers. Is there a remedy to the outside money that is pouring in?
It's a problem, and it is happening, and that is making this already tight market tighter, because individuals can't compete when corporations come in with cash. They don't need to do an appraisal, and so we're losing out. They're taking that money, that house, off the market. They're also, if they're buying 30 houses in some neighborhood, that's also then increasing the value or increasing the price of the next house that goes for sale, making, again, it's just a vicious cycle of where people can't afford it. So I think we need to look at, are there ways that we can control that market? And are there ways, we need to look at, well, why are they doing it? What is their long-range plan? And because it is not helping. We have the worst disparity gap in the country between black homeownership, which is about 25%, and white homeownership, which is about 75%. So we really need to figure out what is going on. And I think there are some ways that we can stop it, and I think there are some things that we will be looking at to try to get a better handle on that, because we need to do something to reduce that disparity gap.
And if that disparity gap is not reduced, then, owning a home has always been a part of the American dream. It's how people build wealth. Are we potentially in danger of losing that aspect of the American dream?
I think we are. I think we are potentially losing the dream and the hope of the dream. I mean, how do people, you pass on that generational wealth, and if you don't have that home to build that wealth, you can't pass it on. And so I think we do need to figure out, again, a way to get more people into home ownership. It might not be for everybody. Not everybody wants to own a home, but I think we need to have that option. And right now, families and people do not have the option when I think the beginning home price in the metro area is at least $350,000.
Now, you mentioned one bill that you have authored to, whittle away at this enormous problem. Are there other ideas, initiatives being put forward by the DFL caucus in particular? I know the legislature is looking at a nearly $8 billion surplus. So what might be coming down the pike to attack this problem, not just in the metro, but across the entire state of Minnesota?
Yes, the housing crisis is not just in the metro area, it is across the state. There might be different solutions in different parts of the state depending on the needs. The city of Austin has done some very creative work to try to get developers in there to help stabilize and redevelop some of their NOAA, natural occurring affordable housing, and they're having a hard time doing that. They're saying, hey, we will work with you, come visit us, and they're having a hard time. And so the solution that they have might be different than the solution in my neighborhood, where we have a lot of developers that are continually looking to put in places. We spend about 1% of our budget on housing, and so I think there is a big opportunity, from the bonding bill to cash grants to putting more money into like the Challenge Fund, which helps, housing developers, nonprofit housing developers can apply to, and cities can apply to.
Senator Kari Dziedzic, thank you so much.
Thank you.